I'm a fighter.
I didn't hear that.
I'm a fighter.
I don't believe you. I don't.
I'm a fighter.
These are just small samples of the praise Wes Craven's 1996 slasher Scream received, a film that is today considered an undisputed horror classic. At the time, however, nobody knew this modestly budgeted script, mostly starring up-and-comers and penned by the newbie Kevin Williamson, would become one of the most successful horror movies and horror franchises of all time, not to mention the highest-grossing slasher film, a record held for almost 22 years, only to be broken by the Halloween franchise in 2018, a worthy contender considering Scream owed much credit to Halloween for its existence. It was a no-brainer there'd be a sequel. Even without the praise and ticket sales, Williamson already had ideas for a part 2, having originally planned the series as a trilogy. The intentions of more Screams were clear even in the film itself.
She said everybody dies but us. Everybody dies but us. We're gonna carry on and plan the sequel, because let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
And just like how Scream's success came out of nowhere, a bunch of actors suddenly wanted a piece of the upcoming sequel, expecting that, even if it likely suffered the horror sequel syndrome, the movie would still be a success.
So we did Scream, and then the movie came out, and we were just a little engine that could, and then we just grew into this thing. I do Scream 2, and then we do Scream 2, and Scream 2 is like, like I said, it's become cultural zeitgeist, and everybody, not only were the girls that were in the movie in Scream 2 on the cover of Rolling Stone, all the girls that played the girls, Heather Graham, Tori Spelling, all of them were on the cover of Rolling Stone, along with Jada, Neb, Sarah Michelle.
Veteran actor David Warner was featured in a single scene as Sydney's theater professor. Joshua Jackson, known for Dawson's Creek and Mighty Ducks, settled for a cameo during a reshoot as a nameless film student. Omar Epps, who was recognizable from Juice, Major League 2, and Don't Be a Menace, settled for a non-picture credit role, though his face did appear in some of the ads at the time. Jada Pinkett, whose career was off at full speed from movies like Menace to Society, Jacob's Lyric, Nutty Professor, and G.I. Jane 2, would follow Drew Barrymore as star of the opening scene. While the comparisons to Barrymore's Casey Becker were repeatedly referenced, with the opening scene's setting being in a theater playing Stab, a film reenacting the events of Scream 1, there are significant differences in these two openings aside from just the characters and the setting. In particular, Scream 1 is mainly influenced by When a Stranger Calls, while Scream 2 is influenced by He Knows You're Alone. Tonally, the two scenes are very different. Scream 1 left you wondering what was going to happen next, driven by the brilliant marketing that made audiences assume Casey was the main character, whereas Scream 2 was more like a ticking time bomb of tragedy. Audiences wouldn't get duped a second time, so everyone knew it was only a matter of time before Pinkett's character would meet the same fate as Barrymore's. Others joining the cast included Sarah Michelle Gellar, perhaps one of the most sought-after talents of the mid-90s, from the Scream wannabe I Know What You Did Last Summer, and the lead role in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Laurie Metcalf, who had just finished wrapping her long-standing role as Aunt Jackie on Roseanne, playing Debbie Salt, a local reporter who passed herself off as Windsor's version of a Gale Weathers, and Jerry O'Connell, the fat kid from Stand By Me.
But it's a fat kid, real good.
Played Sydney's new boyfriend. Elise Neal, Timothy Olyphant, and Dwayne Martin co-star in the supporting roles of Hallie, Mickey, and Joel, respectively. The movie is a continuation of Sidney Prescott's story after surviving the Woodsboro murders. Williamson chose for Sydney's tale to naturally progress from high school to college, seizing the opportunity to pay homage to horror films set in academic institutions.
A house in Sorority Row? Dorm that your blood? Splatter University? Graduation day, final exam?
Even though Dimension Films was trying to strike while the Scream iron was still hot, releasing the film less than 12 months after its predecessor, the movie nonetheless takes place 2 years after the tragic events in Woodsboro. Sydney is at college, trying to move on with her life despite having to deal with some inevitable unfinished business, such as the psychological trauma of Billy and Stu's killing spree, Gale Weathers publishing The Woodsboro Murders, which was the second book about Sydney's life, the first one detailing the brutal murder of her mother, Maureen Prescott, plus the premiere of Stab and the release of Cotton Weary, the man who was framed by Billy and Stu for Maureen Prescott's murder and was sent to death row as a result of Sydney mistakenly identifying him as her mother's killer. After Maureen Evans and Phil's murders, Gale arrives at Windsor, prepared to write yet another book on another series of murders. After the murder of Cece Cooper, the dots are connected that Windsor victims are linked to Woodsboro victims by name, leaving Sydney and Gale, along with fellow survivors Dewey and Randy, to battle a copycat killer whose ultimate goal is to finish what Billy and Stu started back in Woodsboro. The movie was so hyped that Williamson's draft quickly leaked onto the internet, which ended up revealing the killers, a spoiler which basically ruins the entire movie. The concept of leaked material was brand new to the industry. Scream 2 is one of the earliest examples of an upcoming movie getting spoiled through the internet. Thus, the initial draft of Scream 2 ended up being a mere starting point, nothing more than chicken scratch, forcing Williamson to do constant rewrites during production, with producers refusing to send the final pages to the cast and crew until the day of filming. Ultimately, this trend of same-day rewrites would continue with Scream 3 and 4, with Scream 2022, aka Scream 5, even going the extra mile of writing fake scripts and filming fake scenes so that if leaks did happen, nobody knew if it was fake or the official version. For several years, the version of Scream 2 that everyone thought had leaked onto the internet was a draft titled Scream Again, which was indeed one of the many titles considered, along with the draft retitled Scream the Sequel, before settling on simply Scream 2. There were numerous differences in the Scream Again draft, such as Joel and Randy's roles being swapped, with Joel being the fifth wheeler of Sydney's new group of friends, while Randy was Gale's cameraman. Hallie and Mickey were an item, and Mickey was the character who ended up being hazed, not Derek. As such, while being tied to a tree, Mickey was actually killed by two ghost faces at the same time. The only other time we see a murder by two on-screen ghost faces is in Stab 6 at the beginning of Scream 4. This clearly means that Mickey wasn't the killer in the original draft. While Debbie Salt was still indeed Mrs. Loomis, she had two accomplices, Derek and Hallie. Finally, Mrs. Loomis's attempts to brainwash Cotton actually worked in this version.
Cotton is, of course, the biggest wild card. In the original ending of the script, he and Sydney would have a knife fight at the end and they both die.
This ending implies, but doesn't outright confirm, that all characters die. With Dewey succumbing to his injuries, Gale being killed by Cotton, and Joel receiving this strange off-screen death, possibly done so that the viewers might still suspect him after he's killed. The script sounds a bit wonky, however, reading it in context, I think it's kind of a cool version of Scream 2. Other fans, however, dislike this version a lot, mainly criticizing that the twists are lame and too extreme for the story's own good. And this opinion is actually significant in the mystery of whether or not this was indeed the true version that got leaked. For 20 years, numerous reports confirmed that this draft, which has been dubbed the four-killer version, even though Cotton technically wasn't in on the killings until the very end, was the script they originally intended to go into production with. In 2017, however, Williamson contradicted this, telling Dread Central the Hallie and Derek ending was a dummy draft. At the time the script was written, the studio was determined to keep the plot details under wraps. They were worried the killer's identity would be leaked, so we wrote several endings. 3 in all, if memory serves. And when actors and potential crew members asked to read the script, we would send the script with the dummy ending. There was even a fake ending where Dewey was the killer. They existed as a decoy and nothing more. Extreme measures, but we really wanted to keep the killer's identity a secret. In December 2022, however, Williamson clarified in an Entertainment Weekly interview that the fake ending with Dewey as the killer was orchestrated by his team of writers and penned by his assistant in response to the inevitable leaks. We were sending the script out without the last 75 pages to do our best, but we knew it would come out. So my team wrote a dummy script, my assistant wrote it, and we had a fake script with Dewey as the killer, and we leaked the fake one. So by the time the real one got out there was no fuss, no one cared. This clarifies that the Dewey ending was deliberately fake. As for the true script, or in Williamson's words, the real one, was it the 4-killer version or the one with Mickey as the killer? Even though the 4-killer version never came to fruition, it still acted as a big what if in Scream fandom, similar to the what if regarding Kevin Williamson writing Scream 3 instead of Aaron Kruger. As such, even though this version will never get made, Williamson's statement to Dread Central about the 4-killer version still creates a mystery because it's the exact opposite of what other crew members have stated.
In the original ending of the script, he and Sidney would have a knife fight at the end and they both die. I think the last shot is them both lying there in the theater dead.
That's right.
That's right. The first script...
And Dewey was dead, everybody was dead.
The first script, it was actually Hallie and Derek were lovers. That's the one that got out on the internet.
Yeah.
So we rewrote the whole thing. Hallie and Derek, that's right.
So, who do fans believe? Williamson, the man who conceived Scream, or Craven and crew, the people who helped bring the movie to life? Some fans have questioned the validity of Williamson's Dread Central statement, but why would he lie? Well, if the conflicting statements about the 4-killer version are indeed because of a lie, and for argument's sake, let's just say it is. For starters, it may have been Williamson's carelessness when sending the draft that caused the leak. The full details of how it got leaked have never been disclosed, but it's been reported that the leak occurred only hours after Williamson transferred the script to the film's production. It's possible Williamson didn't take all the necessary precautions, and the statement he made to Dread Central is damage control. Secondly, and this is where the aforementioned fan opinion comes into play, the theory is that Williamson was so embarrassed by the quality of this script that he just doesn't want to admit he wrote it in all seriousness. Petty, but again, this is just for the sake of argument. Now, let's put the dishonesty theory aside and determine how logical Williamson's reasoning is. And, unfortunately, there are some holes in this explanation. Again, he's quoted as saying, "Extreme measures, but we really wanted to keep the killer's identity a secret." This explanation makes little sense since the two biggest twists in the final version are also present in the 4-killer version, or as Williamson calls it, a decoy or dummy ending. The first major spoiler is that the survivors of Scream 1 were still fair game to die. Even though Sidney, Cotton, Gale, and Dewey survive in the final version, Randy's death was still present, and it had a huge impact on the film and remains one of the most significant events of the series. Another major event that appears in both versions is that Debbie Salt is Mrs. Loomis. Scream 2 doesn't exist without Billy's mother being the killer, a character which is also foreshadowed in Scream 1.
When my mom left my dad, I accepted it. It's the way it is. She's not coming back.
Your parents split up. This is not the same thing. Your mom left town. She's not lying in a coffin somewhere.
Your slut mother was fucking my father. And
And she's the reason my mom moved out and abandoned me.
With these plot details in both versions makes decoy scripts ultimately useless. Why go through all the effort of writing a fake ending with Derek and Hallie as the killers just to protect the Mickey reveal, but then do absolutely nothing about rewriting the twist of Debbie Salt being Mrs. Loomis? It doesn't add up. The problems with the claim that fake endings being sent when actors and potential crew members asked to read the script is that the ending isn't the only thing different between the scripts. And the placement of each character in the entire script has a huge domino effect. You couldn't just pluck one random character, throw the Ghostface costume on them, and then have them show up at the finale.
That script went through a lot of changes, and I can remember writing sessions when we would have 6 people in a room trying to brain check each other because you get a plot line worked out for, say, the second half of the second act, and then, oh no, we can't because she was there, and you can't, therefore you can't. So it's like, a lot of trying to figure out plot points and things in the middle of shooting, which is another thing that comes from people screwing up your script.
So much for that part about there being no fuss and no one caring about the script leak.
Kevin sent us, I think something like 30 pages by email. We read it. It was fabulous. It was on the internet in its entirety that night. And all those you little fuckers out there that think that's really cute, you fucking ruined our next 3 months.
So what's the deal here? Well, for me personally, Kevin Williamson wrote one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't want to assume he's lying. The contradicting statements between him, Craven, and others could be the result of something else. Perhaps the version that got made into the actual Scream 2 was the version Williamson thought was going to be made all along, while others involved were planning on using the leaked draft at the start of production. And since daily rewrites turned into a reality on the set of Scream 2, intentions of which script was really going to be used became unreliable depending on who you ask, as a result of endless revisions being written all the time. So this mystery might be caused by every person having their own unique truth behind what happened with the leak. Williamson may have unwittingly confirmed this in the December 2022 Entertainment Weekly interview when he prefaced his latest answer about the leak with the following statement. Here's how I remember it. There are so many different versions of this story, and it's so funny because I get asked this question a lot. We also have to look at the source. Williamson's statement is from the 2017 Dread Central article titled Exclusive: Scream 2's Jerry O'Connell and Kevin Williamson Talk Leaked Scripts and Different Killers. A key phrase in this article that didn't appear before was dummy draft. Now, 5 years later, when you look up Dummy Draft and Scream 2 together, results show that the 4-killer version has been reduced from a fun multiverse version of Scream 2 down to an outright rumor. However, when you actually read through all these articles and watch these videos about dummy drafts and Scream 2, all the sources come back to this one article from Dread Central. As such, I decided to write Dread Central explaining the significance of the quote. Being that they have over 250,000 followers on Facebook alone, they may never get a chance to respond to me, but I'll be sure to give an update if they're ever able to provide any additional details. Intentions were very clear that Scream was a planned trilogy, so if everyone died at the end of Scream 2, how would there be a Scream 3? Well, there's at least one explanation of what could have happened next. While a lot of Williamson's treatment for Scream 3 was discarded for what ended up being the real Scream 3, one of the things that was kept for the script that Aaron Kruger penned was the impact that Stab had on the world. Having a movie about characters who were fans of Dewey, Sidney, Gale, and Randy, without any of the actors actually reappearing as their characters in the movie, would have made our heroes almost spiritual and could have been meta on a whole new level. So, a version of Scream 3 still could have existed even if the 4-killer version of Scream 2 were true. This mystery opens up conversation for people to voice their thoughts on Williamson's statements. It also encourages fans to read other drafts of Scream 2 and welcomes them to share what they enjoy about the Scream 2 we actually got. So please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoy Scream content, then please remember to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and share, because there's more to come. Constant rewrites tend to be a sign that a film's script doesn't have a solid story. With Scream 2, however, no matter what obstacles were in its way, such as a rushed production and endless revisions, the movie came out on top. From the positive reception to the road it helped pave for its successors, fans can look back 25 years later and know that Scream 2 was a fighter.